Welcome back. In the final WordPress video, we are now going to move our WordPress blog to another website. Now, this is something that you might have to do if you change hosts or if you buy or sell a WordPress blog and need to move it to its new owner's host. So pay attention. There's a couple of things that we have to do, but basically it's a matter of backing up both of our database and our files, restoring them to the new location, and then making a couple of changes to some configuration files and to the database itself to reflect the new location. And in the case of our move over here, we're also going to change the URL. So this is a complete move of WordPress. So let's get started right now. This is the test blog that we built in the last two videos, and this is what we are going to be trying to move to a new host. So the first thing that we're going to move is the files from our WordPress site, and I've already logged into my FTP program, and if you remember from before, the files for my web host are on the right side, and on the left side are the files on my local computer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a directory over here to do the backup, and I'm just going to call it backup. And again, I'm using WinSCP. You might be using a different FTP program, but it'll have an operation to create folders. You could also use your Windows File Manager to pre-create that folder. We'll go into backup, which of course is empty. I'm going to create two more directories into here, and I'm going to call one of them MySQL, and that's where I'm going to put my database backups, and another directory, which I'm going to call WP, and that'll be my WordPress. And again, the names aren't important here, just as long as you have a location to put the files and the database. And so now I'm in my WP directory on the local machine. Over here, I'm going to take everything except the stuff that was there before. So I don't need to take the CGI bin, but I need to take these three WordPress directories: WP admin, WP content, WP includes, and plus all of the rest of the loose files in the home directory also need to be taken. So I'm going to take them, I'm going to copy them down, and that's going again into my WP directory that I created just to back up the files. So we're copying down the files from the original server, and let's start doing that, and this will take a little bit of time, so I'm just going to pause it until we actually get the files copied. Okay, and the files are just moving down right now, and we're just about finished with the FTP operation. And as you can see now, we have all of the files that we have on our server are now down on our local machine. And that's going to include all the files that came along with the plugins and the extra themes we installed and everything. It's all been downloaded to our machine now. Okay, now that we have the files copied, the next thing we need to do is we need to get a copy of our database. And to do that, we're going to use a utility called phpMyAdmin. And that's included with your cPanel. If you don't have a cPanel, you'll probably find that phpMyAdmin is included with whatever control panel or database control panel that your host provided. It's a very common method of controlling MySQL databases. So let's go take a look at that. This is phpMyAdmin. I've already opened it up. Now again, this is on the source host, in other words, the host that we're moving everything from. And we can see where our database is. If you followed this series in the beginning, you'll remember we created a database called WordPress, and it got prefixed with the name of the account we used. So this is the database. I'm going to select it over here. And it displays all of the tables in the database. The number 11 beside it indicates there are 11 tables within the database. What we need to do is we need to export this database. So if you'll notice along the top over here, we have a number of operations, one of them being export. And in the export window, we'll see a number of options which we really don't need to change. We ask what kind of a format the file is going to be. Make sure that's checked as SQL. By default, that's going to be the format. Pretty well everything over here is already set the way that we'd want it to be, so there's no need to change it. What we do need to do is tell it that we want to save this as a file. So we check Save on File, and then we hit the Go button. and it's going to prompt us as to where we want to save this file. It's going to save it as a type.sql file, which is actually a text file of the SQL database contents. And if you remember, we made this backup directory, and in it we made a MySQL directory. So we're going to dump our file into there. So let's save the file there. And the file is going to take a little bit of time to save. It's got to actually make a text file for everything on it. So we're just going to wait until that file comes down. Okay, so now if we look in our directory, we will see that we actually got the .sql file. This is the backup of our database, and if you recall, we also have a backup of all of our files on the old server. So now it's time to move to the new server. But just before we do, there's one little thing that I want to do. There's a configuration trick I'm going to show you over here. We're going to go into the directory where we put the files that we downloaded from our server. Now these are all the WordPress files. And we're going to go to the configuration file, the wp-config file. Now you remember in the original operation we had to set this up with the database, and we're going to have to configure it with some new database parameters. We're also going to have to give it a couple of extra lines just to tell it about the new domain name. So before we do any moving of files, let's get our server all prepared for it. We'll get all the information we need, and then we're going to edit this file. Okay, so now I've logged into the control panel on my new server, and I'm going to have to build a database for the new WordPress installation. And so I'm going to go back into the MySQL utilities. I'm going to create a new database, and we can really name it anything. It doesn't have to be the same as the last one. I am going to use the same name, but that's not imperative. And if you'll recall, when it builds it, it's going to actually prefix it with the name, so it's not going to be the same name as the old one is anyway. So as you can see, we've got a new database, and we're going to create a new user too, and give him a password. Again, these parameters don't need to be the same as the old one. I just happen to be using similar ones. And we're going to add the user to our database. And the user is added. And as we did the last time, I'm going to record the values for the user. Now there's our old one, so we're going to make a new user and a place for the new password and a place for the new database. And he's also going to be localhost. The server we're going to is also using localhost as a database, but again, this doesn't have to be the same. If it's a URL, you can put the URL. So let's just copy the values that we have. The new database name is this over here. And the new username is this. And as you recall, we used the same very insecure password. And again, these are just for demonstration purposes. I definitely recommend that you don't use a password like this, but you use something very secure. So now we have all the information for our new database. So that's the first step in the new database, and we're going to configure our configuration files with this in a minute. But the second step is we need to actually get data into the database. What we've done is we've created a blank database, but there's no data in it. So we're going to go to phpMyAdmin on the new server now. And phpMyAdmin is loading. And as you can see, there's our new database, and you'll notice the 0 beside it. There's actually no tables in that database. If I were to open the database now, there isn't very much to see over here, folks. There's no tables within the database. And so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to import some data in. So you remember we did an export from the old server. Now we're going to do an import on the new one. And we're going to choose a file. And there's the file that we had exported from the old server. We're now going to import that one. And we're going to tell it to go. And it says it's been successfully finished. And you'll notice that now we have an 11 beside there. There's a list of the tables. So we've got the 11 tables from our old database imported into the new one. So now our database has been moved over. There's one operation we're going to do at the end to the database to change some of the data within it, but that'll be a step that we do later on. So now we're going to go and configure our file with the new database information and then move all that stuff up to the new server. Okay, so here we are at the directory that we downloaded all of the files from, and as you recall, I said we're going to have to modify wp-config.php. From the first video when we installed WordPress, you know this is where it carries its database information. So we're going to replace that, and then I'm going to show you two more lines that you're going to want to edit into this file. So again, I'm going to use my favorite editor, PSPad. You can use your favorite editor to do it. It's all pretty well the same. But do not use anything like Microsoft Word to edit these files. That'll add extra control characters and will cause a big mess. So you definitely don't want to do that. But otherwise, any text editor, even Notepad would work. But again, I don't recommend Notepad because there are so many free text editors that you can get that make this a lot easier. Okay, so let's get our new information up. The new database name will replace the old one. And I know these look the same, but as you can see, there's a subtle difference. The two domain names I'm picking have similar names. Again, that is no requirement whatsoever. Okay, and let's bring our little cheat sheet up over here. Get the new username. And we'll put that in here. And in our case, the password and the host name are the same, so we don't need to do anything with that. However, like I said, there are two lines that we're going to have to put in to our file over here, and this is going to reflect the name of the new URL that we're moving to. Now, if you're moving your site, but you're also moving your domain name, you don't have to do this step. But in this case, we're moving both the site and the domain name, so we're going to do it. So at the end of all this text over here, I'm going to write some commands over here. I'm going to do define, and in the same format as you see up there. And the PSPad editor, you'll notice, actually makes the open and closing brackets for me. It does this automatically. And also it does the quotes for me automatically. When things come in pairs, it does it by itself. So the first constant we define is WP underscore site URL. And then after that we put a comma. And we define that. We'll put a space. And another set of brackets. And that's going to be and this is the name of our new URL, incidentally. And at the end of that statement, a semicolon. And this is a PHP statement that we are basically defining what's called a constant. And what we want to do is change some constants that WordPress already has memorized for our old site here. And there's a second one to do. We do define again. And this is WP underscore home. And we'll move over here, put a comma in, another set of quotes. Oops, so I wanted to do single quotes in this case, and it's going to be the same as it was before. In fact, I can just save myself some typing by doing this, copying and pasting. And again, we ended up with a semicolon. And now we are going to save this. And again, it's the wp-config.php file that we've edited. So our database is created, our the configuration file is ready for the new server, and the next step is going to be to move the files up to the new server. Okay, so I'm back in my FTP utility. This time I'm on the new server, so as you can see on my right hand side, there are very few files on the server. It's basically an empty server. On this side I have the backups. We've already made use of the MySQL one with phpMyAdmin. We're going to go into the WP directory and we see all the files that I had there. And so I'm going to select all of these files, and this is basically the same as when we installed WordPress in the first place. I'm just going to copy all of those files up to the server and let that copy. So we're just going to let those files copy back up to the new server. Alright, and our files are just about up there on the server, and there they are. So now we've moved the files, we've moved the database. There are just some minor configuration changes we still need to make, and our job is going to be done. Okay, so here we are on our new page. This is on the new site, not the old one, and if you'll notice, everything looks pretty much the way it was on the old site. There's really doesn't look like there's very much else to do, but there's a subtle change that still needs to be made, and the reason is that within your database, you may have links going between different areas of your site. Those links will have the old URL written in them. And so you're going to have to make a change to move them to the new one. Now again, if we are moving both the site and the domain name, the following step is not going to be necessary. But this is going to be necessary if you're moving to a different domain name, and that's what we've done over here. But you'll notice that otherwise the site looks the same. It's got the same theme to it, the same text, etc. If there had been pictures, etc., those would have been up there as well. Everything is essentially the same as the old site. So our job is nearly completed over here. Let's go make that one subtle change we have to make. Now the change we have to make involves replacing a number of entries within our database, specifically the entries that have anything to do with the old domain name. We're going to want to put the new domain name into them. And to do that, there's a number of ways of doing it. We could have actually manually edited the MySQL file and done a search and replace. That's one way of doing it. But another fancier way of doing it is with something called the Search and Replace plugin. And if you recall, plugins add extra functionality to WordPress. We're going to use this particular plugin in order to assist us do this. It's called Search and Replace. As you can see, it's compatible with WordPress 2.91, which is our version of WordPress. So we're going to download that plugin. And we're going to put that in our download directory with the other plugins. Okay, and we're going to go to the dashboard. Now this is the dashboard of our new installation. This is basically the identical dashboard we had with the old one. And as you recall, in order to install plugins, we scroll down on the side to where we get the plugins. And we add a new plugin to the site. And we're going to upload it. Choose a file, and we're going to get the Search and Replace plugin and install that right now. And the plugin installed successfully. And then we're going to go back to the plugins page, and we need to activate that plugin. Okay, and now that we've activated it, you'll notice that down in the settings on the side, there is a menu item for Search and Replace. And so on the Search and Replace plugin, it's going to ask us what we want to search and replace. We're going to pick all over here. Just click that, and it will click all of these fields. And so basically, it is going to go through the database and replace the original text. And the original text, we're just going to use the URL name, and we're going to be using and replace it with the new one. And we'll say go. And it found 11 entries in one of the tables. That's the only place it found it, but the replacement has been done. And so now if we go back and visit our site, we should find everything is working. We can jump between all the links, and there's no problem. And we have successfully moved our WordPress site from one host to another. We've also changed its domain name. We've kept all of the information, all of the posts, all of the plugins, all of the themes. Everything has been moved. So I hope you found this to be informative. I hope you've watched the whole series. And remember, you can always refer back to the videos if you need any help with this. But I thank you very much for your time and hope you have a great day.